Hi, my name is Susan Oh, and I guess I'm a Korean-born Canadian New Yorker in Middle England. And you might, you might be tempted to ask, well, what am I doing here, right? The funny thing is, I've never asked that question because I've never really belonged anywhere. I'm an immigrant thrice, a refugee once. I was born 20 minutes from the world's most heavily armed border, near Seoul, South Korea. And at the time, it was a military dictatorship. And so when the government pulled my father's passport in an attempt to stem the brain drain, he was an industrial engineer at the time, he came back and basically told us we were going on holiday. And then within days, had either sold or given away everything that we owned and moved us to Iran, Isfahan in 1975, just before the Islamic Revolution. There we lived for 2 years until there were escalating acts of violence, people that we know who disappeared or went for picnics in the countryside and didn't return. My sister saw 3 women stripped, head shaven, and stoned to death in the streets. And at that point, finally there was a car bomb that was found in the back of my parents' friend's car. And it became very clear that we needed to leave. So for the second time in 3 years, my parents rounded us up. And being engineers, they said, each of you get 1 toy to bring, and we leave next week. And that was that. Then we went to London, where we were refugees for about 8 months, waiting for our status and living in limbo, until one of my father's business partners sponsored us to Canada, where I grew up. When I say that I've never belonged anywhere, that goes also within my family. You don't talk about such things in an Asian family, especially an Asian family of fundamentalist Christian engineers. Right? These are engineers that don't believe in evolution, and there's a right way and wrong way to do everything. When my sister fell in love, she said to me, "Do you know what I love about him? He's so rational." Right? Do you know what I love about math? There's only one right answer. And that kind of surety they reveled in. Whereas, I became this chain-smoking punk rocker that went out to gay discos when I was 14 and danced my ass off to try and make sense of the world. But it was only through that exercise of working through that I could let clear my heart and allow myself to use my heart. It was meant to be used as a divining rod. So I learned English because I was being bullied at school and would hide out in recess, and the only book that they would leave out was, the dictionary. So abacus, abattoir. I went through English as a second language for grades 1 to 3, and then by grade 6 was in the gifted program with the first year university vocabulary. I became a journalist to understand my parents and how the global became so intensely personal for me. And it was through that work of journalism, of being able to break down complex structures into a narrative arc, that I finally found the vernacular to be able to relate and speak with my parents. Now, this became very important as I started as a journalist for 25 years, covering aviation, finance, and then finally technology, where frequently I was the only female there and the only one under the age of 55. That sense of not belonging and being okay with it and finding that vernacular and that narrative arc that can land became my lifelong mission. So when I was writing about technology, those companies would turn around and then ask me to consult for them, to help them with their storytelling strategy and their community hacking. And then I was hired by my first Silicon Valley startup company in 2014 as AI was coming out of its first winter. And over the 6 months, as I learned how edges and nodes were created, nodes you can see, you can kind of correlate as being an event, and the edges as the experience or the memory of that event to all link together. And when I became aware of the potential of this technology and the philosophy behind it, I was terrified at first. And they said, no, Susan, don't be afraid. That's why we picked you. Because if we can get you to understand it and you to love it, then you can show the benefits of it and bring it about, right? And so technology for me, working in technology was so cathartic because finally I was able to use my skills as a translator from the engineering mindset to humanity and back and forth to be able to really help build beautiful products and to be able to shift the right conversations so that those designs became human-centric. And then 3 years ago, my tech team from 2 failed startups ago came back to me and said, look, we have this thing, this back-end bot that we think can help track fake news. You were a journalist for 25 years. Can you please take over and be our CEO and take over the training corpus? So I did. And I studied the program and studied other AI companies around the world who were attempting to do similar things. And I came back and I said, fact-checking is not going to make a dent. As a journalist of 25 years, having written for Newsweek, The Economist Intelligence Unit, and CNBC, I will tell you this is not going to make a dent. What we need to do is track source behavior. And so I went about the difficult process of building a training corpus. Data can be very expensive, and we're flooded with data, but to make that data useful, to get useful insights out of it, and to relate it, correlate it to things that become useful is extremely difficult. And I thought the world needs another data scraper like it needs a hole in the head, right? So I met this woman in the women's washroom, and we were admiring each other's fabulous outfits, you know. And she goes, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm building an AI company. She's like, oh, I want a chatbot. I'm like, great, 1.5 million minimum to start. This is why. And I said, what do you do? She goes, oh, I've got a Bitcoin starter kit. I'm like, oh, no, I don't want anything to do with that baby buying Bitcoin. And she's like, no, you don't understand. It's bigger than that. And so she's like, we should really work together. You know, you should really help me translate this technology because intelligent decentralization will bring efficiency and transparency to this world order and bring about new collaborative frameworks where we could determine the value and value the things that we value as human beings. So for 3 months, she carpet bombed me with links, and I read it and watched YouTube videos at 2x the speed. And one day I sat up in bed and said, holy shit, I could crowdsource the data that I need. I could crowdsource the weighting and tagging of the data to bring better validated results to much more efficiently train my machine learning, right? So if you think about it, I have a friend, and he sat on the board of the World Bank, and he wanted to build a complex system. He said, look, a technology without philosophy is efficiency without purpose, right? And so I took a look at those 2 technologies that I thought were synergistic, and the philosophy behind them is simply that AI you can look at as automation of tasks and vast amounts of information that human beings were never meant to do. As human beings, we're meant to create, we're meant to nurture, we're meant to have vision and dream. Let the machines do the heavy lifting of the consistency. And for blockchain, it's simply this, that you have a transparent, time-stamped framework that does not have a single point of failure that no single government or entity owns. There's surety in that consensus that we all agree to hold hands and value same things. So I built one of the first rudimentary models to integrate AI with blockchain into systems. And over the course of the last 3 years, attempted to build my company. I've gone through hundreds and hundreds of solutions, none of which were relevant to my own company. But apparently they were useful to other people because then I became one of 9 people who helped launch an NGO with the support of the Office of Partnerships at the UN General Assembly, where we marry technologists with enterprise and funders and founders and get them into smaller groups to ask a singular question that we can all answer through the prism of our own needs and resources. Because as any entrepreneur would know, all of our moves are mitigated by cost and risk, right? So a singular thing is, let's identify a single problem that we can all get on board with, right? And see what we bring and offer and see how we'd like to solve it. And that brings consensus through the necessity and practicality of a framework. If somebody had told me, you know, as a chain-smoking, mohawk-haired, raver, or as a poet and as a journalist, that someday that I would be working in technology surrounded by engineers when I had just escaped my family of engineers, I wouldn't have believed it. I am only led to do these things by being asked. I was asked to solve a problem, and I did what I could to show up. I know that the global is intensely personal. Had I not been a refugee, had I not been an immigrant, I would not know how important it is that the global becomes personal, that we all have an act to play, that we must bring ourselves fully into this world so that we can accept the fullness of the world, so that we can be fully present to be part of that solution, and that we all have a role to play. If a Korean, Canadian, New Yorker, and a tatted 5'0" woman is invited to UN headquarters or the Pontifical Academy at the Vatican to show the poetry and the philosophy behind technology, then who are you to deny what you can contribute to this world, as long as you stand in your authenticity and that you are actively helping to solve this world's problems? A few years ago, I was at Burning Man, and the desert is fantastic. You cannot find the horizon, right? To me, the desert is both a blank slate and a mirror. It invites you to build and to bring your visions to it. And through that struggle, you become more fully who you are, and you see what you're capable of. So there was a dust out, at Burning Man. And in the distance, first thing I saw was like this 3-foot-story vacuum cleaner that came up, and I was like, whoa. And then behind it was like this 3-story Converse sneaker. And I thought to myself, God, if some guy wants to spend $40,000 and 3 years of his life building a 3-foot Converse sneaker, who am I to deny what I know I can build? Oh yeah, and so after continuously failing forward on my AI company, I decided maybe I shouldn't be reinventing the wheel. Maybe I'll take a step back and look at what is plausible. So I was just asked to become global CMO of a robotics company in China. This is Bobby. He's an AI-enabled support therapy cat. He has facial recognition and sentiment analysis to bring about the happiest states. All the data that he takes in is encrypted end-to-end and goes off of edge computing, so is not stored anywhere to protect your privacy. So all of the different components inside this cat is already commercially available and working. It's the synthesis of them in a different composite that makes him who he is, that makes it unique. And if you think about it this way, over the course of my work, thanks, that has taken me to over 200 cities around the world and 32 countries and disparate communities far and wide, synthesizing different models and different groups to participate together, seemingly contradictory, a narrative arc of humanity became apparent to me. That my favorite people in the world, who are artists and scientists, physicists and mystics, all had something in common. It was that they saw what wasn't there, but what could be. And they saw it at such a granular level that they could hold two opposing thoughts and opposing states together, as long as there was a clear framework and a desire for collaboration. As the world hits the hard fork of the most urgent problems in the world, this is what's needed for us to come to the edges and come together as nodes, to collaborate as one. And the only responsibility that we have is that we become fully who we are, but with joy and with compassion. Thank you. Yeah.